Oil clay is a great sculpting medium for prop makers. You have a clay that's mixed with oil rather than water, which means that it will stay moist and pliable forever. The disadvantage of this is that since it doesn't dry out, you can't really use it for a finished product. So as prop makers, we use this usually to make a mold of something and then cast it out of something later. I'm going to be working on this scary gargoyle man. So for any sculpture, you need a good reference picture. This is a full-scale picture of what I'm going to be sculpting. Since it's going to be a one-sided sculpture, I've attached it to this board that I could sculpt on. One of the advantages of this is that I could take this sculpture wherever I want. Since I'm putting the clay right on it, I'm going to be slowly covering up the picture, so I have a second picture that I could refer to as this gets covered up. Oil clay comes in a wide range of hardnesses, everything from rock-hard clay that you could actually machine with tools, up into soft stuff that you could really mush around with your hands. What you use depends on what kind of shape you want to create. If you have something with really sharp and precise details, you may want a harder clay. If you want a more organic, flowing kind of shape, you might want a really soft clay. It also depends on your own personal preferences. Some people like to work with harder stuff that they carve, while other people like to really use their hands to smush stuff around. So experiment with a bunch of different hardnesses to see what you like. Most clays get softer as you heat them up. So you could actually hit it with a hot air gun to heat it up. Or if you're working outside, you could leave it out in the sun for a bit. As I work the clay into these little balls, the heat from my hand is actually softening it up and making it a little more pliable. I'm starting off just building the whole thing up just with my hands, trying to get a base of clay everywhere where I need it. Once I'm happy with that, I could go through and refine the shape with various tools and start sculpting and carving in some of the details. I drew a side view of the sculpture so that I could see how high the various parts are. Of course, it's difficult to sort of eyeball the points when you're just looking at a drawing. So I traced it onto a piece of cardstock and cut it out so that I could sort of basically lay it over top and make sure that I'm hitting all the high points I want. Now with practice and with certain kinds of sculptures, you could actually do the whole thing with your hands, but for most of us, we need a little help. Some examples of basic types of sculpting tools include ribbon tools, which have loops of metal on each end, various types of gouges, scalpels, and metal points, wooden pieces that can be flat and smooth, or have combs, or have sharp profiles, or various shapes, or even just points. The variety of sculpting tools you could get is endless. It's not the kind of thing where you could buy a complete set and just go from there. Every artist is different, and every artist has his own personal opinions about which tools they like to use best, and it depends on the material that you're sculpting and the effect you're trying to achieve. As you work, you may find that you need to lubricate your tool or the surface of the clay to help work it more smoothly. Mineral oil is good for this. If you have trouble finding mineral oil, you could actually find it in the laxative section of your local drugstore. Some people like to use isopropyl alcohol as well for more aggressive smoothing. You can use stronger solvents too, but you start getting into safety issues. You don't want a jar of solvent sitting around evaporating for you to breathe it. As you practice, you're going to find that you gravitate towards a set of tools that you use over and over again. You may see another sculptor who uses a completely different set of tools, but that's fine. Again, it's personal preference, the material you're carving in, and the effect you're trying to achieve that's going to determine which tools you ultimately use. A set of calipers is a handy tool to have while sculpting. You can use it to compare measurements between your reference image and your sculpture. You could also use it on the sculpture itself to make sure the parts are symmetrical. Remember to check every angle of your sculpture every once in a while. This guy's getting a little asymmetrical. He's a fairly organic and grotesque shape, so in the end it might not matter, but you want to try to get it as perfect as possible whenever you can. We already know that heating up the clay makes it more pliable and softer. You could also cool down your clay so that it becomes harder and allows you to sculpt without mushing around too many details. You could set it outside overnight if it's a cool night, or you could even put it in your fridge or freezer. So there you have sculpting in oil-based clay. As you can see, the tools and the techniques are pretty easy to demonstrate and to pick up, but the actual practice of getting good takes some time. And a sculpture like this could take several hours, even for somebody who's already pretty good at sculpting. But of course, the great thing about oil-based clay is you could set it aside and come back to it several hours or even days later, and it would not have dried out.